Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here, the mediocre astrologer. He's okay. Um, Guys, in this video, I want to look at a simple way of analyzing the chart, right? If you want a just a simple kind of breakdown of the charts, I'm going to explain that to you, how you can do that. So I'm going to share my screen. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share, all that good stuff. Yeah, book a reading with me, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. It's that simple. Just email me and we'll get it set up. All right, just share my screen. And I'm going to look at my chart as an example. I like sharing my chart, honestly. Some astrologers are very protective of their chart. Just as a little side note, and I think it's hypocritical when you're, especially if you're going to be, willy-nilly looking at all sorts of charts, sharing everyone's chart, but you're not going to show your own chart. Like, come on, give me a break. Show your chart. Astrologers need to show their charts. Like, otherwise, don't show anyone's chart because you're just being a jerk. You're being a dick. You're like, oh, look at everyone else's chart, but not my chart. Like, no. In any case, I'm sharing my chart. I've shared it a bunch of times, but I like to share it. I'm proud of my chart. I love my chart. And it's nonsense that some people can hurt you if they know your birth date or whatever. I don't think so. Anyways. All right. So a simple way of analyzing the birth charts is this. I already broke down the four quadrants, the four sections, I should say, where we have the self, other, personal or private or home, and then public, right? And that would be the self would be the 12th, first and second houses. The 12th is the subconscious self, right? The first is the conscious self, the most physical conscious self, the body, right? The second house is the house that the self produces, our assets, our resources, our physical material possessions, and our self-worth, right? And our voice. Then we have the other, which is service to others in the sixth house, the daily grind. It's where we're most likely to have a boss or serve others in some way, or fight others for kind of equality or competitive way. Seventh house is all kinds of relationships, mutual relationships, equal relationships, right? Marriage, business partnerships, trade deals, agreements, law, legal stuff, lawyer, judge type things. Yeah, negotiations, markets, stuff like that. And then we have the eighth house, which is the intimacy, house of intimacy, where one person is controlling the other, one person is dominant over the other. We have like the idea of dominatrix is a very eighth house Scorpio thing, right? Where you're like, you have the dom and the submissive. The dominant is obviously the Scorpio, right? It's shared resources, it's power, it's control, and that means over other people. And yeah, so I liken the eighth house or Scorpio to the Scorpio, actually, the heavyweight champ, right? Eighth house is very fighty. It's different than the sixth house. The sixth house is constantly striving for something greater than itself, whereas the eighth house is about maintaining its superiority. Eighth house already has the title belt. It doesn't need to win it again, so it's not striving like the sixth house. It just needs to maintain it. Just needs to hold it. So there is that kind of superiority. If there's a superiority complex, then well, eighth house is one place. But I want to elaborate further on this idea of selfness versus otherness, because if we think about otherness, that then we could also include the third house or Gemini and the 11th house and Aquarius, because these are also social houses. So they're not they're not on this side of the zodiac map, right? But they are trying the descendant axis or the Libra axis, which would be, the air signs, right? Third house Gemini, 11th house Aquarius, and third house Gemini would also be a social sign house combination, because Geminis are very social. Geminis are the twins. One of the associations with Geminis, lovers, right, or brothers, twins. Gemini is basically casual relationships. Like, you can think about the neighborhood that you live in, and it's just sort of like the, hey Bob, how you doing? Walking down the street. Hey Jenny. Hey Mary. Hey Brian. Hey, like, it's all these very casual relationships. Hey Mr. Jones, how you doing? Right? It's nothing deep. It's very superficial, very light, very easy, right? Sort of like how Gemini goes about socializing. 11th house is communities, right? Networks, groups. The internet is 11th house thing, but actual physical communities are an 11th house thing. Anything where that has a sort of community vibe to it, where people are gathered for a reason. Like, there's no in the third house, it's not, people are not gathered together for a reason. They're just there because they live there, right? They're just in the neighborhood because that's where they live, right? In the 11th house, you're coming together around an ideology, a purpose, a reason, a goal, right? And so there's that social aspect. So the social houses really are third house Gemini, sixth house Virgo. So the two Mercury houses, or the two Mercury signs rather. Seventh house Libra, eighth house Scorpio, and 11th house Aquarius, right? Now, conversely, these self houses are, right, 12th house Pisces, first house Aries, second house Taurus. These are all very selfie-ish. I don't want to say selfish, but selfish, right? Self-oriented, right? Along with the trines to the ascendant, which would be the fire houses, right? Leo in the fifth is very self-oriented, right? Leo's about ego, about pride, about the individuation. Aries is mostly about the individuation of the self. Leo is about the sort of, I guess you could say, hierarchy, the further development of the ego, right? The real culmination of the self as far as the ego. And then you get Sagittarius, which is also very self-oriented, but in a much higher-minded, intellectual kind of way, right? Where you're reaching for a higher sort of self, a God self, right? A philosophical self, religious self, a higher-minded self. Yeah, so Leo is going to be much more creative, basic, I don't mean basic in a negative sense, but it's a little more simple than Sagittarius. It's artistic, it's creative, it's fun and games and entertainment, right? And then Sagittarius, you're getting into very highfalutin, high-minded philosophy and graduate school and religion and what's the meaning of life and what is God and all this stuff. But it's still very self-oriented. So for the self side, you have 12th house in Pisces, first house in Aries, second house in Taurus, fifth house in Leo, ninth house in Sagittarius. And this sort of leaves two behind that don't fit into either category. And this would be fourth house in Cancer and 10th house in Capricorn. And these two belong to what I'm calling the family unit, the head of the family unit. And we could elaborate that further. But let's just stick to it simply being that the fourth house is the maternal side of the family, and not that it's solely represented by mothers. The fourth house is represented because sometimes they use it to represent fathers, and accurately, I've seen it, especially in more classical astrology, they liken it to the father. But what it really represents, the way I view it, is that the fourth house or Cancer represents the maternal side of the parenting factor, which means that whoever's at home with the kids, right, whether it's father or mother or both, right, is going to have that fourth house Cancerian role. If you're actually at home being a parent, right? Then you have that fourth house Cancerian influence on the kids. If you're at work, being the breadwinner, making money, having a career, providing for the family, then you have the 10th house Capricornian role. And if you're doing both, so a lot of parents do both, then it's going to be both, right? You're going to be at home with the kids, and then you're being a more fourth house Cancerian kind of influence. And then when you're at work, providing money for the family, then you're being more paternal 10th house Capricornian role influence, right? So then what you can do is break these down into your own personal chart to see how you're being influenced. And the way I look at it is that, so I would look at primarily in this order: ascendant, sun, moon. And the reason is this: ascendant is the most personal sense of self, right? Whereas the sun is the most worldly way in which we connect to the world. It's the way in which we connect to the world. Sorry, I didn't say that well. But the reason is this: because the sun is maybe the center of the solar system, and everything revolves around the sun, and it's by far the biggest. It's the only star in the solar system, obviously, and it's the biggest object in the solar system. But we don't live on the sun, we live on the earth. So that's the dichotomy, right? You have this extremely powerful sun, which is way bigger than all the other planets combined, and everything revolves around it. And it has the most mass out of everything in the whole solar system. But then we actually live on the earth, right? So that's our personal home, is the earth, which is represented by the ascendant. But the sun is still the center of the solar system. So these are like the two kind of dichotomies of the self. Some people think, why my sun sign? I'm a Gemini. In my example, I'm a Gemini. I'm a Gemini sun. I'm a Gemini, right? So they identify with their sun sign. But really, the most personal sense of self is in our home, the earth, the ascendant, right? So these two are the two sides of the two biggest chunks, percentages of our personality, of our selfness. Not including stelliums, like if somebody has like everything in a like one certain house or sign, that's obviously gonna have a major influence on their personality, right? Besides that, then the third aspect would be the moon. The moon is what makes us really happy in our heart, so you can't get like, if you're doing everything but ignoring your moon, you're gonna be miserable. You might be successful, but you're not going to be happy, right? So anyway, let's break it down a little bit. So obviously there's many ways to look at a chart and many things to look at in a chart, but this is a simple breakdown of a chart. First house is always the self, right? It's the main sense of self, the most personal sense of self. Obviously, look at the planets in the first house, if there are any. Conjunct the ascendant in the first house, or even if it's conjunct the ascendant from the 12th. Generally in the same sign as the ascendant would be the most influential, right? But if it's within a few degrees, like for example, if I had a planet at 29 degrees Libra, it would still have a minor influence on my ascendant. Any case, Scorpio is a relationship sign, right? It likes intimate relationships, where like, especially ones where it has control and power, right? So that's in the first house. So Scorpio rising, this will be for all Scorpio rising, their personal identity requires intimacy with others. They need that. That's for their most personal sense of self. They need that intimate relationships where they're really close with others and they have a sense of power and control over that other person, right? And this is not everything, right? I'm not going over every aspect of my chart or every aspect of Scorpio or every aspect of the first house. It's really just about self, other, and the combination of those two, and the third edition of the family unit, Cancer Capricorn, right? So first thing is that sense of self is with other. So if you had like a Leo rising, then you're very self-oriented, right? If you have Sag or Aries rising, any fire sign, you're very self-oriented. If you have Pisces or Taurus rising, or Aries, obviously I already said that, then you're still very self-oriented, right? But if you have any of the water, no, not water, sorry, any of the air sign risings, or Virgo, Scorpio, then it's a mix, right? You need other people for your personal sense of self, right? Then we can look at the sun. So my sun's in Gemini, the 8th house. These are both relationship signs in a relationship house. The relationship sign in a relationship house. Conjunct Venus, the significator of relationships. And this is actually a sticking point. If you understand what North Node in the 1st house means, especially with no personal planets, this is a very lonely placement, especially later in life, which can really alienate a person and make them very alone. Because here with North Node in the 1st, what I have to learn and what has to grow is about me being independent, especially conjunct Uranus, right? It's about me being myself alone, right? Me being Joe Waxman and nothing else. But I need other people in my life, right? Because I got Scorpio rising, which is intimacy. And then I've got Sun in Gemini, along with Venus, Sun conjunct Venus in Gemini in the 8th house, which is why I'm always, one of the reasons which I love making videos, because I'm connecting to other people. So that is satisfying a social role for me, as well as when I do readings with clients, that also is satisfying that. There's some other reasons we could look to further, but just keeping it really simple, right? For my sun sign, definitely it's social. I need other people, right? 8th house in Gemini, I need to talk. And the 8th house in Gemini is interesting because it's like superficial relationships with the Gemini influence, but 8th house is intimate relationships, right? So there's that dichotomy between keeping things really very light and fun and playful and easy and, detached, and going very deep and, really becoming attached. So that's an interesting combination there. And I forgot, I skipped a step. Actually, look to the ascendant lord, right? In this case, I would look, especially for like, Scorpio or Aquarius or Pisces, then you'll have dual ascendant lords, one is the main ascendant lord, the classic ruler, the more physical planets, the closer ones, the more personal ones, is the main ruler. But then you have a secondary ruler, which is more energetic, right? So Mars would be my main ascendant lord, and that's also going to have a huge influence on the sense of self. So that would be Mars in Leo conjunct MC, which is a very prominent position for my ascendant lord. It's in Leo, Leo is very self-oriented, right? Very prideful, egotistical, right? Creative. So I have, that there's this desire for my personal sense of self to be at the top, especially in the public arena, career-wise. But Capricorn or 10th house has that family role. So there's a sense of responsibility as well as a sense of pride and egotistical kind of desire to be, kind of honored or at the top of my game. Leo really wants to be the best. It's royalty, wants to be the king, and it doesn't want to work hard to achieve that status either. That's the kind of the thing. It's just kind of like feels very entitled and deserving. I'm not picking on, I'm out because I'm talking about myself. I'm just being honest. Like that's kind of Leo's thing. It's like, I'm just you should honor me just for being a Leo, right? Just for being who I am. I'm me. Just so give me attention and put me on a pedestal and, worship me because I'm, that's my nature. That's a dramatic interpretation, but that's kind of the way Leo operates. Is head held high. I'm a Leo, right? So my ascendant Lord here, it's difficult for me to um accept humility and um keep my head down, um even though I kind of have to with Saturn here, right? So that's kind of this challenge for me. It's a dichotomy because the selfness of Leo and Mars that's very strong. Mars and Leo is very prideful, egotistical, and then in the Capricornian role, having to be mature and responsible. That's very um, much a 10th house necessity to do well in 10th. You have to. It's not just about yourself. You're taking care of a family unit. Even if you don't have a family, there's still that quality of being responsible and mature. I mean, even if it's just public image, right? You still have to play that role. You still have to um, have this um, quality of maturity and responsibility for others in the public arena when you have the planets in the 10th house. Okay. Obviously, I talked about Saturn. We could look at what other houses. Mars also ruling the 6th house, so that's you're bringing sort of service, but also competition. And then we have Saturn here, which is not me. I'm Mars. Saturn is the older authority, which is always over me, like bosses and stuff like that, old people, things like that. People, very annoying people who want to rule over me. Any case, that's pulling from the 3rd and 4th house. You can tie that in. I don't want to go too deep into my chart. That's not the point of this, but you get the idea there. Also, you can look at, okay, Uranus co-rules the 4th house, so that brings in a sort of maternal aspect into my nature. All the other things too, like trauma from childhood trauma, right? 4th ruler, especially retrograde Scorpio, which did have. I mean, if you know anything about me, you'll know that I had some trauma when I was 10. My brother was killed by a train. He was hit by a train. That was very traumatizing. But besides that, bring in a 4th house element into my nature, which could be a lot of things, but as well as a maternal quality, right? With my son, I'm very maternal. Like he comes over, I cook. I don't even know where it comes from because normally I'm like the least maternal. Like I don't want to take care of anyone except my son. Like he's the only one I want to take care of, like a mother, right? Like I'll cook for him, I'll clean for him, I hug him, I tell him I love him. I'm very affectionate with him, very warm. Like, but I'm not like that with other kids. Like other kids come around, I'm just like, I just want to ignore them. Like I don't want to be maternal with them, but I am with my son, right? So that's kind of thing. And it's not every father's not like that. My father was not like that at all, right? He never cooked for us, never hugged. I mean, we give like, but he's not affectionate, and I'm not criticizing him. That's just people are different. Different people are different. Any case. Yeah. So then you look to the moon, and this is what you need to be happy to feel emotionally satisfied. Mine is Virgo in the 11th house, and these are both social signs. Virgo is service to others. 11th house is community, right? So for my moon sign, I feel like I need to serve in a community, in a group, in a network, right? This could be over the internet. This could actually be an actual physical community, which I did spend time in many times. And service to that community would also be important, feeling useful, right? Doing things, cooking, cleaning, chopping wood, carrying wood, or all the basic stuff. Or if it's more of an internet community, which can be these days, then it's somehow offering value to the community, in serving that community, being a help, right? Moon is also going to be very nurturing as well, having that motherly quality. So that is very, now very easy to derive from there, right? Then let's say like you have let's say that call this a stellium, which I guess it is, Chiron, South Node, Jupiter, Mercury, in the seventh house, Taurus, right? So that could be another thing I could look at. And so Taurus, again, self, right? Self-oriented, because Taurus is the sign, it's the second sign, and it is the product of the self. So materialism, product, money, wealth, security, all the things that we can, produce from ourselves, values, self-worth, things like that, the voice. And then seventh house is obviously others, right? So then the self and others. And so, for myself, I mean, I'm bringing a lot of value to others, you could say, with Taurus. Taurus is very, very rich. It's earthy. So very rich resource I like to bring to others. Jupiter and Taurus is so excessive, right? We have Jupiter and Taurus now. I mean, if everyone's not stuffing their faces and, hasn't been like geared oriented towards that since Jupiter's been in Taurus, well, I think you probably have. I mean, that's one of the tendencies of Jupiter and Taurus, is to hoard and to gather, because Jupiter is very expansive. Taurus is very rich and thick and like juicy and, fertile and, of course, South Node is going to change that dynamic, but, generally speaking, I'm just trying to flesh it out for you, like how it would work, right? So there's a lot of richness here that I like to give of myself, my own, the resources that I've gathered, I like to give to others, right? Okay, which is kind of what I'm doing here right now. And then you can do this for each planet, each house. Like, okay, Pluto is like the sort of energetic ascendant lord for Scorpio. Libra is obviously a relationship sign, but it's in the house of subconscious self. So it's, again, self and other mixed here. Pluto is very obsessive, so it's going to be obsessed with relationships, but in a hidden way, because it's subconscious, right? So it's also obsessed with sort of the subconscious world, the afterlife, and it's a very it's a difficult position, actually, Pluto in the 12th, because now you're obsessed with the intangible, and even suicidal ideation can come from this, because you're like constantly thinking about the invisible world, right? The afterlife, the spiritual realm, right? You don't want to be obsessed with spirituality here. I mean, it's not that you don't want to be obsessed with spirituality, it's just not very good, conducive for physical development when you have Pluto in the 12th, because Pluto's such a powerful planet, and now you're obsessed with invisible things and relationships, and you're driven by these things, and like so difficult anyway. But it's a combination of this obsessive psychological relationship obsession, and this in a very hidden place. So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of desire for, just in general, Pluto and Libra definitely desires relationships. Pluto's very desirous. They're very obsessive about relationships. The Gen Xers, right? Not just relationships. I mean, Libra has all sorts of connotations, but there's a mix of self and other here, right? As well as in the first. The second house, this would be self, Neptune, right? Second house, Taurus, Sag, higher mindedness, philosophy. So, I mean, that's not great for money either. So anyway, I don't want to go through each of these combinations, but like, what you can do is just look the sign, the house, and if there's a planet there, what house is it ruling? Fifth and the second. That's good for speculative investments, good for losing money in speculative investments, or sometimes gaining, but the retrograde is not very good for gains. Yeah, What was I gonna say? But yeah, speculative investments, teaching, this is good for. Sagittarius is a very natural philosopher. Neptune is very spiritual. But the retrograde again is going to put a twist on things. Neptune's opposite my sun and Venus, which can be a challenge. Makes me very imaginative. Puts my head in the clouds, and makes it hard to be grounded. But in any case, yeah. Then you can also look to the Lord Jupiter to get a further idea. Oh, also you can look to the Lord of the, not the Lord, the dispositor of the sun and moon, individually. Mine's the same, mine's Mercury, to get a further idea. In the same way that we look to the ascendant Lord, you can look to the sun's Lord, which would be the sun's dispositor, the moon's dispositor, right? And then that's obviously Taurus, 7th house, which we already talked about. That's what I'm doing right now. Taurus, voice, other, Mercury, communication, right? Talking to you guys right now. That's right here. That's satisfying my sun, Venus, moon. Talking about astrology, and then sometimes I like to talk about social things, right? That's a very 11th house thing. 11th house could also be astrology. Any good, guys? I hope you understand how I'm breaking this down between self, other, and then the third option would be the parental kind of unit, right? Where are you maternal? Look to the 4th house and 4th lords. Obviously Uranus, but Saturn, 9th house. So I would be very philosophical. I have a philosophical, but also Capricorn at 10th house. So Saturn obviously has some 9th house influence, but also 10th house. And I know it's 10th house because always in my work career, there's always this Saturnian figure, which I have to call boss, but he's really beneath me always because Mars is stronger here. So this is me, I'm Mars, and here's my boss, weaker than me, but in a superior position nonetheless because he's Saturn, right? So I have to, kind of bow down to this inferior person, which is very difficult for me because I'm, it's Leo, but he's proud, I'm proud, nobody wants to bow down. And so there's natural conflict, especially because Mars rules the 6th house. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, you can break it down. There's always more to break down. This is, Saturn's also my 3rd lord. Whatever. Self, other, and then the parents, the family unit. That's a simple way of looking at charts. If you need a way to break them down and to figure things out about your nature. So that's it for now. I'm going to do another astrology of video soon. It'll be the astrology of astrologers. So I'm putting together a list of that might come out tomorrow or the next day. And yeah, that should be interesting. And so guys, hope you liked it. Hit the like button, subscribe, share, email me to book a reading, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you again soon. Thank you. Bye. Mediocre astrologer signing off.